Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics. Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is Fred Schenkelberg.
And this is Kirk Gray.
Hey, Kirk, do you ever listen to the startup music to the show?
Yes.
Or do you just skip ahead 15 seconds?
I do.
You skip ahead?
Well, when obviously when I do my show notes, or we have to write the notes, I first copy my show notes for the book and the article I just love the most from the U.S. Army.
Your standard.
I just wait. Everybody
links,
want to read reliability prediction, a misleading, continued reliance on a misleading approach.
Yeah.
Please read it. I didn't write it, folks.
Yeah. But your work in the field has influenced their thinking.
So I do that, and then just kind of listen to it. And yeah, I do skip our opening, which is you've changed over the years.
Yeah, a couple of times.
A couple of times. And in fact, I was just going to suggest you can go to make your own music through a particular app now.
I don't want to get sued by somebody that got
no.
Some publisher's going to come rip me off.
No. I heard about one the other day. It's called Suno, Suno.
Okay.
And I think it's a paid for, but it creates completely copyright free, just kind of synthesizes. And I think you've heard that now AI is being used to create, not only
Beatles songs that were never recorded,
right? Or one of the most popular groups on Spotify doesn't exist. They were totally fabricated, and they've created actresses and actors that are completely artificially generated, but they look incredibly real. So that's becoming a challenge for getting reliable information.
Well, it's part of you were talking about. You sent me a link to what's the most controversial thing,
right?
In reliability, and then we started looking at the other things, and you asked your system, how many episodes was I in Speaking of Reliability, and they gave you a partial list, which we thought was odd because they're all available on the line, and I thought, if it could do all of them. If it actually gave you the true count of how many you have, and we could check it, then when I update the contributors page where it's, the top level, I'm drawing a complete blank what it's called, but I have an artificial threshold that if you do a lot of content contributing our episodes and webinars and podcasts to the site, you become the top tier. And if you haven't provided any content in like the last 6 months or a year or so, then you go into the archive. No picture, just a little line with your name on it, kind of thing.
Right.
And I thought, this would be great. I'll just have one of these bots, one of these large language models, because I know they're crawling the site. How many times has Kirk contributed content to the site? And then which the most popular, and then I could do, most listened to or stuff like that. But then we kind of ran into, you tried it, right? You had the system open, you gave it a try, and it says, there's no publicly available stuff. We can't see anything. We don't know.
Listener counts or listener statistics or ranking data for individual SRO episodes. There's no chart or top episodes list on SOR on your site. So that's up to you to, if you want to play around with that.
But then, but the hard part is that the metrics for the least metrics I have access to is because all of the podcast episodes are stored on an Amazon S3 bucket. Why they called them buckets is beyond me, but it's a bunch of software people. And so they get streamed from there. So if anybody actually downloads it or listens to it, whether it's streaming or download and then played, the podcast metrics then say, you downloaded it. Now, if you have a podcast player, like many of us use one or another version of some podcast player,
Right.
then you can set it so, oh, only give me the most recent 3, or give me the 3 I haven't listened to, or 10 I haven't
Right.
listened to, or
Right.
give me them all. Have them
Right.
all on my system.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have a good memory amount on your iPhone nowadays to load all 1100 and plus episodes that we've done, so that,
Right.
more
Right.
power to you. But it's ever since I've started with podcasting 10, 12 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
it's always been fuzzy whether you knew how many actual listens you had. And then it makes me think of when I was growing up in high school, listen to the
Mm-hmm.
local radio station kind of thing. And they would always
Mm-hmm.
do these call-ins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can, it was for
Requests.
requests or for whatever.
Right.
And part of that was the engagement part, so that there's contests and there's call-ins and
Right.
the third
Right.
caller wins and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. But in hindsight, I'm looking at it, it's a way to know that their microphone's actually working.
Mm-hmm.
you know, that
Yeah.
that the station is on air and there is somebody out there listening. And it's kind of
Right.
like that with the podcast
Well, I would think that there are. I don't know because I don't do what you're doing, and I've haven't been deep into podcasting other than being on on this podcast. So I don't
right.
know, but I'm sure that just like we would when we did a computer program, we would put in flags that may show, and in there we can radio back, that this podcast has been listened to. Not only has been downloaded, but the person, just like when we do messaging, you can see that somebody's read it, it's been delivered.
It's been delivered and
Sometimes
then
you
read.
can
Yeah.
read, right? So you know that, yeah, it's been delivered, but it may not have been read. Now, yeah,
And
that's
email
not
even does that.
possible.
There's ways to do it with
Right.
email with some
Yeah.
systems, and there's filters to counter it so they can't tell whether you got it or not. And
I, I, I think that there's probably those programs or sub-programs, or, maybe you have to pay for them. I don't know. I haven't explored it, but that's probably how you can get more reliable data on, what is really, just like when somebody ships a product, they get it and receive it, but you don't know when they started using it. They might have let it put it in storage for a while.
yeah, or
And
it's a
I go back,
spare.
and the same thing I do with podcasts. Sometimes I'll go back and look and say, well, I have time to listen to this one. And I listen to, I download every SOR episode, not just as a routine. Everyone that
Hmm.
comes in, my Apple podcast app just downloads it.
Hmm.
And I have to unload it or listen to it. And
And then say, hey, you can remove
yeah,
it.
and I
Yeah.
like listening to you and Chris and you and Carl and others
Oh, you
talk
complain
about
about us
stuff.
all the time.
No,
But
I
no, so
don't
I know
complain.
that you listen to it because you told me that, and we know that
Yeah.
people listen to it when we get comments and questions back, or features of it, or even randomly. I'm sitting at a conference a couple years ago, and somebody says, "I know that voice. You do a podcast." Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. They probably know you more by voice than your picture since you don't have very few. I have it on every leave it on
Episode.
every
Yeah.
one of my podcasts. So although it's 10 years old, no, it's about 15 years old.
Yeah.
That's okay. I still
Yeah.
look the same.
Oh, yeah, you do. Yeah. A little grayer here and
Just
there,
on
but
more spots on the face.
yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, it's, getting reliable data now that you have this, amazing ability to, anybody can put up a podcast,
Oh,
anybody,
yeah.
anywhere. And
There are
then,
millions and millions
yeah,
out there.
what's your pod, it's, you meet somebody and say, what's your podcast?
Well, there's some of that, but
Yeah.
when we first started this, there was the MRO show. It was aimed at maintenance and
Right.
maintenance reliability operations type stuff. I think that's what
Mm-hmm.
that stands for. And they had, I don't know, maybe 100 episodes at that point, and then shortly after that, they stopped uh, posting podcasts, and I got in touch with them. And they said, "Oh no, I'm moving on," and 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 I started looking for, well, what other shows are out there in reliability or even engineering, and there were
Mm-hmm.
very, very few.
Right.
And when we started, we had the Ascendo Reliability webinar series, which is an
Mm-hmm.
offshoot of the webinars we do. And we had Rooted in Reliability started with James Kovacevic pretty quick. I helped him get it started.
And I had an interview with a guy from CSU. I think at one time you had
Mhm.
a, what is it? I forget the name. It's so long ago. It was probably 7 years ago
Oh,
that
yeah, I don't recall.
I don't either, but he had another one. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was, um but we started with 4 shows. We had, Dare to Know was the show that we did, was kind of the radio
That
talk
was the
show
one.
interview.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And it was for authors and professors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so we did that for a while. I think we're close to 100 episodes on that. But and then there was like 2 or 3 others I found, and they agreed to join the podcast network that we were starting. And
Mm-hmm.
it just meant that we had explicit permission to promote their show, and then there was no money exchange, never has been. And I also have a section on the site under resources. Is what made me think about this is, well, how do I would like to rank order the podcasts if I knew how, I, other than how many episodes they did. Um, I really don't know which ones are being listened to at all, or not, and which ones have really good practical information or not. And without listening to a bunch of them, which I do on the regular, but I went and searched yesterday for reliability engineering podcasts, and I found, like I mentioned in our last episode, I found one that
Mm-hmm.
was a top 10 list, and it had a very nice write up about our show. I thought that was very, very
Mm-hmm.
generous of them. And I found, I don't know, probably 25 shows, some of which I knew of already and have listed in various places and on the site,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and a whole bunch of other ones I had never heard of before. So I got a new batch to go listen to and see if they would fit for us to get them on the reliability.fm network, and promote them.
Put him under the Exendo reliability umbrella, which has
Uh,
gotten very large.
It has gotten large. And
And
and then I'm thinking I'm going to change that menu up for the ones that did 3 shows and then never again. I'll put them in the archive folder.
yeah, right. And then
But it's
you got the long-term people like me that don't go away.
it's just you just keep talking. And but it's the, I because with some of the, like, books under the
Yeah.
resource tab on the site,
Hmm.
I search on Amazon, and then I look at what's the ranking, which changes. So if 3 people buy your book, Kirk, your ranking
Yeah.
goes up like a million.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well,
once
that's
you get into the top 100,000, it's pretty tough to move up unless you're selling a lot of books consistently.
right. Right.
And so I just pick a day, I search, and I pull all of the books that look like they're related to reliability
Hmm.
off to different tabs, and I go through and I check all so it's as close a time frame as instantaneous as I can get for all
Hmm.
this search, and then I rank order them by Amazon rank.
Hmm.
And that gives me a way to say, here's the top 10. But on podcasts, I really am blind. And even as an operator of it, and I'm quite sure if I paid to be a Spotify podcast and ran all of our shows there, and I looked at the pricing for it to move 1,000 episodes over there, it was going to cost a couple $1,000. And I thought,
Well, I get
and then an ongoing monthly bill too.
why that I listen to
You
my
can be a
pod.
listener for free. That's no problem. But to host it there,
Oh,
it costs them money for the memory and the streaming and all the other hardware that goes into making it work. So
well, how do they? What would be the difference in how it's done now? That I can go to Apple Podcasts and you always list all the podcast
Apple Podcast does
apps.
not store them. They don't put them on any of their hard drives other than
Okay,
they point to somewhere else where it's hosted. And
okay,
you
and it
can start a
downloads it.
podcast for free. There's a few of them out there that up to a certain number of episodes or so many minutes, then it's free and it gets you hooked in it. Then they charge you for the space, essentially the service. And others are more high end. You pay quite a bit, like 1,000 a month to do it, but it's got all these high zoot stuff it does for you, including
Right.
editing and post and all the promotion and all kinds of weird stuff. And I'm like,
I
oh,
guess it's how valuable the data is that you want to know, and that's, you know, if you pay for those hosting, I guess you get some other benefits that you don't when you're the way it's doing now, where
yeah.
it's
And I'm still paying for
Apple
the
and
hosting, but it's a fraction of what these other systems would charge us. So I'm like, I'm not to, I mean, yeah, I'd love better info, but I really like it when we get somebody says, "Hey, I listened to this episode. I got a question," or "I
Yeah.
have a question," because I know you
No,
talk about it on the show.
no, that's a personal connection that we kind of crave because we know somebody actually sat down and listened to it. Or any kind of written feedback. I love seeing that
Yeah,
because they, really thought about what we were saying and
yeah,
had some interesting angles on it sometimes.
yeah.
So, but yeah, that's, again, in the data driven and especially AI world, that's going to be there are going to be more tools, I think, to do better jobs. And as I say, you can pay for, a higher level chat GDP or I'm sure all the other AI tools and get
Well, I'm
a
surprised that
deeper
it did.
experience.
Yeah, I'm surprised though, Kirk, when you asked it. So, what was the most popular speaking of reliability episode? I'm surprised it didn't say, "Well, your episode, of course." Just buttery up a little bit,
Yeah,
And if you give me more money, I'll tell you the
yeah,
deal.
yeah.
But I'm also,
Yours the fairest of them
the
all.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we were talking about, trying to figure out how many listens we get to a podcast, and there's
Right. I
all
think that
kinds of
would,
various reasons for this, and costs here or there, and
right,
ChatGPT was no help, but it's also the listens and downloads are conflated because it's the same software trigger to download is the same one that streams it, and
right.
so it's
But we know through software they could identify when the listener has actually listened to it or runs it on whether, and in fact that's I think how they do Spotify, that you've got to listen to the song at least
well, I get on Apple
a
Podcasts, I
minute,
get,
and
yeah,
then they pay
then it counts. Yeah.
and then they
No,
pay the
I got something like that on Apple. If I go to different outlets like Apple or
mm-hmm,
Spotify or the other ones, it
right,
gives me minutes listened.
okay,
And it gives me an idea, that it's
right,
the metric is, oh, you got 800 minutes listened this month. And I'm like, okay, was that one episode over and over again? Or was that because I'm not paying for the service and I don't get the great metrics. So
right,
I imagine they
I'm
have
sure.
something there.
Right. I think those are available. And just like the songs on Spotify I download, I mean they're on my but there's a mechanism that Spotify knows I've listened to that song and how many times I've listened to it. That's how they compensate the artist.
Yeah.
It may be only 0.001 cent per, or even less than that for some popular people.
Yeah.
But it's it is, they
There
do
is
have
some tracking there
there is a way of
for the
doing that.
music.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I'm still the vanity metric is just how many total downloads and how many bots have
Right.
crawled across it and
Right.
stuff like
Right.
that. And that number is like in our 10 years for the 4 shows that we host on Ascendo, which is over 3.3 million downloads.
Hmm.
And some of it's very noisy data,
Yeah.
where it
Yeah.
actually came from.
Right.
Yet that's not the most important one. The most important one is, as I wrap this up, is that, and it's the same in our work and reliability, is you
Right.
need to track the metrics that matter, that help you make decisions and know if it's working or not and
Right.
stuff. And I still find, and I think we agree on this, Kirk, is that when a listener writes in a comment or a question or leaves us a voicemail or contacts us through LinkedIn or whatever, then it's that, oh yeah, somebody is listening. That's great. That's why we're doing it. And it gives us a topic we can chat about that's directly related to somebody's question. And I've heard it a couple of times, is the ones that are somebody's question is like, oh, I was thinking about, having that issue too, or I just ran into that and went and re-listened to this episode and it answered my question. So it really helps the overall community when we get real questions, that
Right.
because you're not
Right.
alone. Everybody
Right.
else is dealing with similar stuff at one point or another in their
Right.
career, their business. So
Right. Different ways, different companies and different approaches, but kind of the same challenges of how do I deal with my management and trying to do better testing and other things.
How do I get samples?
Yeah, how do I get samples?
Failure
there's
analysis
a lot of
budget.
commonality that we know will not disappear in future years.
That's right.
My wife says, I said, well, now this is almost 10th year my book's been published. She says, well, do you think it'll be obsolete over time? I said, well, my intention
the principles won't.
The principles won't, right? Fatigue and fatigue damage and aging, it'll be different for different materials and different configurations of materials and packaging, but it's always going to be the driver that eventually causes things to wear out and fail. Although it takes a hell of a long time for
some things,
for electronic, especially solid state, except for power electronics. Anyway,
how many times we got to ask ChatGPT? Maybe one of the listeners can do it for us. Is how many times has Kirk Gray plugged his book on these shows? I am curious. There's a metric I'm curious about.
Oh, yeah. Like, but they, and people don't realize, maybe they don't, that each one of our episodes is automatically transcripted. So you don't even have to listen. You can read it.
You can read it.
Yeah, you can read the whole thing.
But you'll miss the laughter. I don't think the laughter.
That's true. They can't put in their haha. But the great thing about, and I certainly admire it, even though I'd like to have lots of money off of this, is that you do not advertise. And that's one of the most annoying things about listening to any of my podcasts, unless we have to pay for it on Patreon or something like that,
No, there's
you could do that, but you decide not to. So
we'll talk about that later, and maybe somebody will send us money. It's fun.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, that's okay. We want this information to get out. That's why we do it. We're trying to improve reliability engineering and maintenance and all the other things that are critical to our listeners. Yeah. I don't think we have non-reliability engineers listening, but maybe managers.
I'm sure there's a few, but let's wrap it up.
Okay.
So if you're listening to this, which we hope you are, and you can,
which you
let
are.
us know, just, are you out there?
Yeah.
Kind of the gist of this episode, but you can do that, or even ask a question while you're there. Over at accendoreliability.com/go/SOR. There's a couple of ways to get in touch with us. Kirk and I and the other hosts of the show are available through LinkedIn and our About pages. So let's tally this one up and we'll watch the metrics and the incoming flood of email to how many people are actually listening. And we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Well, we certainly appreciate everybody listening, and especially feedback. And please let us know how we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thanks, Kirk.
Okay, Fred. Talk to you later.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.